Q&A. There'll be a Q&A at the end, so if you're comfortable asking a question, you can, as she does her presentation, you can put it in the chat, or at the end we can unmute you and you can ask your question. Is that okay, Megan?
Oh yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Oh, and thank you, Betty, so much. Really appreciate the kind words. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen. So bear with me for a second here. Okay. Okay, and everyone can see it okay?
Mm-hmm.
Great, okay. So as Betty mentioned, I'm Megan Morrison, one of the registered dietitians at the Princess Margaret Cancer Center in the hematology and now the transplant program. So just a little disclaimer here. The presentation is a general overview. So for more specific information, just please talk to one of your healthcare team members for a referral to a registered dietitian. I just have to move something over here. I'm sorry. I see our faces are kind of cutting off. That's okay. I wish to acknowledge the land from which I am presenting in the territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and is now home to many diverse nations, Inuit and Métis people. I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. So some learning objectives, nutrition goals during and after treatment, how to implement some of these nutrition goals through diet, some strategies for managing those side effects you might be experiencing, and then navigating some common nutrition considerations. So eating well during treatment. So we have about 6 different areas here that we focus on. So healing and preventing tissue breakdown is the first one. Rebuilding immune system is the second one. Reducing risk of infection. Energy and strength to withstand treatment. Promoting healing and recovery, and quality of life and well-being. And 3 main nutrition goals that would be a focus during treatment as well as afterwards are to maintain and optimize your nutrition status. So it's not always about, you know, necessarily gaining weight, but it's about maintaining what you have and keeping that lean muscle mass strong to withstand some of the treatments that you may be on or may need to be on at some point. Number 2 would be to help manage the treatment-related side effects. So I'll get into detail about that after, but you know, specifically what to eat if you're feeling nauseous, or what to eat if you don't have an appetite. And then this post-treatment, or if you're not on treatment, kind of getting back on track and getting back to that, you know, normalcy as to what you were experiencing before. So the first topic I'm going to discuss is about protein. So protein's super, super important. And we know that it helps build our immune system to help fight infections. And I was just hearing you talk about some of the other presentations you were listening to, one specifically on infections. So that this is kind of timely, in that it's really important to have that protein as part of your diet to help with your immune system. Protein is also important to help your body heal during as well as after treatment, and to maintain and strengthen your muscles. So just a little bit about what you might need. So the average healthy individual needs about 0.8 grams of protein for every kilogram of your body weight. And while you're undergoing treatment, you may need between like 1 to 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram per day. So this just shows you there is a little bit of a difference, but again, talk to a member of your healthcare team or your registered dietitian about how much protein you might need per day, as everyone's varies a little bit. So just a little bit about where you can find protein. So we have some of our really good plant-based sources, our nuts, our seeds, legumes like edamame, chickpeas, and then we have some of our meat and fish-based proteins, as well as eggs and dairy. In the left hand here, we have some different protein powders. So that might be like a whey protein, skim milk powder. There's a pea protein photographed in here as well. So for some of those individuals who follow a vegetarian or vegan diet. And then our nutritional supplements, our oral nutritional supplements, if needed, something like the Nutri-Total here, or other individuals might know a Boost or Ensure as an alternative. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of where you can find some protein and approximately how much there is in each serving size if you were to be calculating how much you needed every day. So just to give you a rough estimate, if you were having something like meat or chicken, a 3-ounce portion, which is about the size of the palm of your hand, gives you about 25 grams of protein every day, or it gives you about 25 grams of protein per serving. And then if you were having something like an egg, you get 6 grams of protein in that one egg. So this just gives you some estimates of how to calculate your protein intake every day if you've been given a specific amount by your dietitian. In terms of hydration, so drinking fluids is extremely, extremely important. And I often see that it is a challenge for a lot of individuals to get hydration in. If you're feeling full, drinking fluids makes you feel more full. And so sometimes I see a lot of my patients focus on the food and then the fluid part is missed, but we know that it's super important to keep our body well hydrated. And without it, we might become fatigued, lightheaded. It may make nausea worse or even cause nausea. So typically most individuals need about 2 liters a day, which is about 8 cups of fluid. And so you may need more if you're experiencing any form of diarrhea, vomiting, or have fever. It's good to sip on fluids throughout the day versus gulping on large amounts at once. And some people may need more fluid and some people need less. So this is a rough estimate, but always talk to your physician or your dietitian as to how much you might need in particular. So lots of different types of fluids to choose from, not just water. There are lower calorie options if you do not need to gain weight, if it's not something that your goal is to do, you can focus on the water, soup broth, soda water, teas. If you are needing to gain weight or looking for that higher calorie option, sometimes it's good to get that through fluid. If you don't feel like eating or if you just want an alternative. So something like a full fat milk, a fruit juice, a Gatorade is often used as needed. If you're looking to get a little bit of that protein into you and you want to do it through food, looking at a milkshake, milk, a non-dairy beverage like a soy beverage, or an oral nutritional supplement like an Ensure or a Boost. And just a little note here about caffeine. So just to limit your caffeine intake, Health Canada recommends no more than 400 milligrams per day, which is about 8-ounce cups of brewed coffee. So just being mindful of that, maybe choosing like decaf tea if you wanted your cup of coffee in the morning kind of thing. Next, we have calories. So we talked about protein, we talked about hydration. Next is calories. So calories from the foods we eat give us energy. Food is our fuel. So it helps keep our weight stable. It helps give us strength. It helps us focus. It helps give us energy. So it's super, super important to make sure you're eating well through treatment as well as after to recover from any of the treatment you were on or maybe going on at some point. So lots of different strategies for how to get in more calories, but I just noted a few here. So one that I really love is making every mouthful count. And what that means is if you can only eat a small amount, try to incorporate the higher calories within that food. So what I mean by that might be something like if you're having cooked vegetables, to add more calories, you stir in a little bit of olive oil or avocado oil into that. If you're having a plain omelet, maybe go for something that has shredded cheese in it to give it a little bit extra calories. If you're having, let's say, like a muffin or a yogurt parfait, maybe you add a little bit of pasteurized honey or some jam to that. So those are some ways that you could get a little bit of extra calories in the same portion of food and in the same kind of food. Another thing to do to get in some extra calories is smaller meals more frequently. So you may have heard this before, eat 6 times throughout the day, but it in fact is actually evidence-based and And, I've seen it work in practice where, 3 large meals may not be doable anymore. And so in order to get in your calorie and protein needs, you need to eat more throughout the day. And I would also suggest carrying a snack with you when you're out of the house. So if you're going to an appointment, if you're going for a walk, good to keep something with you so that you don't miss out on those calories. So I like this little picture here because it shows all these little animals trying to go into the store that says one size fits all, but they're all different shapes and sizes. And so this just really sums up that there is no one plan. Everyone is different. Everyone has different medical history. Might be on varying forms of treatment. Everyone, eats differently. So just to keep that in mind when perusing through Google and the internet, know that what works for one person might not work for another. So I'm just going to run through some side effects that someone might be experiencing and some strategies for that. So we can see here this individual, this young girl is looking at that big bowl of soup and it looks quite daunting to her. And that may be happening to one of you or may have happened in the past. And so this is really, a poor appetite and things can be overwhelming. So loss of appetite is really like the lack of desire to eat. And we know that this is common during treatment. Also afterwards, medications cause this, treatment-related therapies, the illness itself can do this, and psychosocial causes, if eating alone or just have been through a lot, and that really affects our appetite too. Our environment plays a really big role. So we know that poor appetite can lead to decreased food intake, which can lead to weakness, fatigue, and weight loss. So just a few strategies here for poor appetite if you are experiencing this or your loved ones. Choose smaller meals more often. Eat your biggest meal when you feel your appetite's best. And I know this kind of is counter to what I said before about eating often. It's going to change based on side effects that you're experiencing. So if you feel like breakfast is your best meal, try to pack in more calories at that time. Make every mouthful count. So if you're not eating, if your portions are a lot smaller, try to choose those higher fat and protein food sources whenever you're eating. And eat meals with your family or friends if you can, whether that's in person, in the backyard, or even on a FaceTime call. We know that can be helpful for lots of people during this time. So one side effect that's really common and can be quite distressing actually is fatigue. And fatigue can potentially be more significant in those that might have anemia, are on chemotherapy or other treatments, may have a longer history of treatment or underlying medical conditions. And so some strategies for fatigue, some similar to if you have a low appetite, would be to fuel up at regular times. So give your body that nourishment it needs. Choose nutritious but yet convenient options. So it doesn't have to be something elaborate. It could be chickpeas, rice, and steamed broccoli. So just something simple to give your body what it needs, but not to feel like you have to make things more complicated because that's more tiring. Stay well hydrated, as we know, and as I mentioned before, hydration can help prevent or to make you feel less tired. If you feel up to it, prepare like larger batch cooking, freeze something and portion it out, take it out of the freezer when you're ready to eat. And then could even consider something like a meal delivery service, like Meals on Wheels, something like HelloFresh or Chef's Plate, which are available here in Canada. And I do apologize, I'm not sure if they're available internationally or nationally, sorry, but something maybe in your local community that would be something equivalent. And I just took this chart here from a Nourish resource, which I've left the website there at the bottom as well as at the end of the presentation. So just some smaller meals that don't require cooking might be something like cottage cheese and a muffin, maybe like leftover sandwich with a bit of a smoothie, something like a nut butter sandwich, something that's easy to prepare that doesn't require cooking can help if you're experiencing fatigue. So really important to focus on meals that are ready in a short period of time, carrying snacks with you, milk, muffins, crackers and cheese, something that can get you through to your next meal. So the next is nausea and vomiting. So just a few points here about nausea. So always talk to your medical team about any anti-nausea medication that might be right for you. And of course, if you have worsening nausea and are unable to keep food down, contact your medical team. But a few points about what to do if you're experiencing this is number one, hydration, hydration, hydration. So always stay well hydrated when we're not eating as much, or if we're feeling, or especially if you're vomiting, you need to replace those fluids lost by adding an extra hydration for yourself to prevent you from being dehydrated. Avoid any sort of like strong smell or foods that worsen nausea. So fried foods or anything really cooked, the colder foods, the blander foods, the drier goods like the pretzels I put in the presentation here, don't have a strong smell. And so that can limit the nausea that you may be experiencing. And also get some fresh air. So like open up a window, sit out on your porch if you can, or use a fan if you don't feel like going outside. And I just put in a recipe here from the Goes Down Easy cookbook, which was created from some of the dietitians at Princess Margaret, actually. And it's a recipe, the pear ginger sorbet. So ginger has some anti-nausea properties to it. So anything with a little bit of ginger might be helpful. And often we find that something cold and refreshing is helpful if you're experiencing nausea as well. Okay, so just a little bit about our gastrointestinal system. So some individuals may be experiencing diarrhea, some constipation. So just giving a little bit of information about both and just touching upon this. So again, if this is something you are experiencing, talk to your team about how best to manage your symptoms. But we know that sometimes treatment and medications can cause diarrhea. So loose bowel movements that are watery. So I thought it would be helpful just to show you a little bit of a sample meal plan if that was something you were experiencing, just to give you an idea of what might be helpful to eat that wouldn't exacerbate the symptoms. So something like Rice Krispies and some lactose-free milk for breakfast, maybe having like an afternoon. I'm just going to give you a few points, just being mindful of the time. So maybe like applesauce and some plain cookies as a snack. Lunch could be something like a hard-boiled egg, light rye bread, a small peeled apple, some diluted juice. So you can see you can still get in solid foods and something that has a bit of flavor to it, but nothing that has too much fibers and fat and lactose, as that can stimulate our bowels and perhaps make the diarrhea worse. And on the left-hand side here, I just have a photo of one of the resources that we have at the Princess Margaret, which is available on the website. And I've included that at the end of the presentation as well. So some individuals might be experiencing constipation. So some things you might ask yourself or your team might ask you would be, are you straining with each bowel movement? Do you feel bloated? Do you feel gassy? And you might need medication to help relieve that. And sometimes diet alone can't help. And we know that constipation can be caused by multiple different medications, stress and anxiety, a change in diet, that sort of thing. So lots of different ways to help manage this, but some things you can do to help your gut would be to keep up with your fluid intake. So we keep seeing fluid come up in every side effect and every aspect. So fluid's super, super important. And actually warm liquids can help a little bit with bowel activity. So that could be something you could try if needed. You may have heard fiber helps with bowel movements, but without the fluid, fiber will not do what it needs to do. So fluid is the number one most important thing to do. And then adding more fiber to your diet slowly as you tolerate. Physical activity can help, going for a walk. So as I mentioned before, making sure you're drinking lots of fluids, but just pictured some fiber sources here. So our nuts, some of our legumes like chickpeas, our whole grains, and then some other fibers like sweet potato, avocado, Brussels sprouts, that sort of thing. If you've been told at all that you're at risk for a bowel obstruction, talk to your healthcare team before adding in any extra fiber. Okay, so I'm just going to run through these slides a little bit, as I know I'm talking a little, I might be a little bit over time. So this is, it's okay. This is really important. So the first in, first out method, just some cute little comics here about food safety. So food safety is extremely, extremely important when your immune system might be compromised as you get older, if you've had a transplant, if you even have diabetes, or if you're on any immune suppressing medications or any form of steroid. Okay, so foodborne illness or a food poisoning is by ingesting something or having something that was contaminated. That could be bacteria, a virus, and really it's known as food poisoning. So just a few of the 4 core principles in terms of keeping yourself safe. So cleaning, separating, cooking, and chilling. So I included here just some resources we have through the Princess Margaret, which are available on the Patient and Family Education website. So our food safety pamphlet, which goes through lots of information on how to keep safe, as well as these videos, which are on the YouTube channel, actually, which were recently created by our team. And you can run through some of them. And there's some really helpful information in terms of keeping yourself safe when grocery shopping, when shopping for food, storing food safely, how one would have something that was cross-contaminated and etc. So I would take a look at that if you're interested. And this is through Health Canada's website. So just included this here as to where you could find more information on food safety. Okay, really important to keep yourself safe from the food that you eat, how it's cleaned, how it's prepared, and then how it's stored. But I just want to include a few things here as in terms of like what to have and what not to have. So things that you can eat if you fall into one of those categories would be things like well done cooked meat, canned tuna, canned salmon. Fruits and vegetables are okay as long as they're well washed. Cooked tofu, packaged roasted nuts, dried fruit such as raisins. So again, not an extended list, but just a little bit to get you going. And some things that you might want to stay away from if you fall in one of those categories. So something like undercooked meat, poultry, fish, and eggs should be avoided. Any raw shellfish, sushi, smoked salmon, any form of unpasteurized dairy, juices or honeys, and any soft cheeses like a brie, camembert, or blue veined. Okay, restaurant eating, it's okay to do as long as you're safe. So, asking that food's prepared fresh, make sure your juice is pasteurized, avoiding places like salad bars, delis, buffets, soft serve ice cream, milkshake, yogurt, smoothie places, juice bars, those sorts of places where, you might be more exposed to contaminated food or food that, if left out at 4 to 60 degrees, which we would know as, similar to room temperature, could spoil quicker. Watching out for condiments that might not be refrigerated if doing any form of takeout. Okay, and like I said, long list of information in a pamphlet. Health Canada's website as well as the CDC has great recommendations for this. Okay, just a little bit about cancer and diet and general information, as I sometimes get asked some of these questions, so I thought I would bring them forward. So blood building nutrients. So I get asked the question sometimes, what can I eat to help build up my immune system? So there's not one single food or supplement that would build your immune system. It's really important to give your body lots of nutrients to speed your recovery and keep your body as well nourished as you can. So just giving you some little bits of information here in terms of nutrients that are involved in blood formation. So our protein foods, foods with folate, iron, zinc, and B12. So just included some of the photos here to give you an idea of what you might want to be incorporating in your diet. So yogurt, nuts and seeds, pumpkin seeds specifically, legumes like our beans and lentils, some of our animal-based proteins like beef, chicken, and pork, and our leafy greens, which are good to include as well. Okay. The American Institute for Cancer Research came out with some recommendations in 2018 for cancer prevention and survivorship. Okay, so they've created this list for us in terms of what to do, how we can follow these as best as we can. And again, with side effects and undergoing treatment, some of these may not be possible. And, you know, the priority might be around just getting in a few meals a day. So this is really for prevention and survivorship if eating well and able to follow these guidelines. So I'll just go through them with you briefly, but again, it is the American Institute for Cancer Research, which you can find on their website. So being a healthy body weight, being physically active, choosing foods that are rich in whole grains and fruits and vegetables and legumes, limiting the intake of fast foods and processed foods as much as we can, limiting consumption of red meat to about 12 to 18 ounces a week, and avoiding processed meats when we can. Limiting alcohol, and in fact, some individuals may be advised to not have any alcohol at all while on a specific medication, limiting consumption of sugar sweetened drinks, and not use any supplements for cancer prevention. Okay, we want to try to meet our nutritional needs with food. So this slide's super busy, but this just kind of sums it up. And this is something you might find on the American Institute for Cancer Research website. Okay, next is I sometimes get asked, is it safe to take an herbal supplement? So actually there's limited evidence on the safety of herbal supplements during treatment. So we would recommend that you avoid taking those during treatment and instead use food herbs in your cooking. So you could use cilantro, you could use basil, you could use thyme. All sorts of herbs are excellent to incorporate in your diet, but just not in a supplement form. And the Memorial Sloan Kettering actually is a really good database of herbal supplements. So I linked that here too, so you could always check that out or bring it up with your team. Okay, and I'm almost finished here, just a few more points, and then I'll take some questions. So often get asked the question, does sugar cause cancer cells to grow faster, and should it be avoided? So it's a complicated topic, and there is a lot to it, but just some of the facts here. So all of our cells use glucose, which is sugar, for energy. And glucose is found in most of our carbohydrate foods. It's the main source of fuel for our cells. But there is currently lack of evidence to support that adding sugars directly feed cancer cells. And then there's lack of evidence to support that removing them starve cancer cells and change outcomes. So when we remove some foods that contain glucose, like whole grains and fruits and yogurt, those are naturally occurring sugars, we miss out on healthy nutrients by avoiding all sugar containing foods. So we would miss out, if we weren't having whole grains, on some of those good fibers. We would miss out on having calcium and vitamin D if we completely removed, certain dairy from our diet. So the bottom line is that our cells need energy, especially the healthy ones, during treatment. Sugar is a natural part of our diet, but not all sugar works in the same way. So I added a little check marks to the foods that you want to have more readily or are okay to consume from our perspective. Again, if you're not someone that has dairy, you don't need to start adding it. You could use a non-dairy source of milk or yogurt. That's up to you. But it does have naturally occurring sugars as well as fruit and legumes, for example. So you would want to include those kinds of foods as a part of your healthy diet. And things like candies, chocolate, and fruit drinks for example, have sugar added to them. And so, as I had mentioned from the American Institute for Cancer Research recommending we limit this, I would put this on the to have on a special occasion kind of section. But I didn't put an X because it doesn't mean that you can't never have it. It just means you don't have it often. Okay. And lastly, do I need to eat all organic food? So again, a question I get asked often. And so I did take a picture here from the American Institute for Cancer Research. I really liked how they described it. So the myth is that organic plant-based foods can offer protection against cancer. And the fact is that eating mostly plant-based foods reduces your risk, but organic foods are not proven better. Okay, so there are a lot of studies out there in terms of organic or not organic. And so really, there is no direct proven health benefit over choosing the organic food over the conventional. You know, there were some studies that were done in terms of the farmers themselves and their risk for the pesticides versus the consumers. But just keeping it simple today, and you know, grown conventionally, organically, fruits and vegetables are part of our diet, which helps to lower our overall cancer risk. And like we were talking about before, choosing those whole grains, the fruits and the veggies are super important. And so we wouldn't want to avoid them completely. And if it means choosing conventional, choose conventional. If you do wish to choose to buy organic food, just look for the certification seal to make sure that you're buying the right choice for yourself. Okay, so just to finish it up here, the key message is it's a balancing act. You know, there's lots of things to take in mind, and there are potentially lots of questions that you might have and things out there in the media and that you might be reading. So if you're eating well, continue to eat your usual diet, focus on healthy foods, choose a variety of foods. You know, changes to your diet might be needed if you're experiencing some of those side effects, or you may have other side effects that I didn't mention. So definitely talk to your healthcare team about a referral to a dietitian because they can help you manage some of those. Always look for credible information and definitely ask for a referral to a dietitian at your local center if you need, if you're experiencing any side effects I mentioned, or again, just want to, you know, talk about how to have a healthy diet and what might be right for you. Okay, so I listed a lot of information here in terms of where to find some good information. So some helpful websites, as well as some places you can find some good recipes and some cookbooks as well. So take a look through some of those and you might find something that's right for you. And I would be delighted to take any questions that you might have. And I did go through a lot of information. I wanted to make sure I got through some key points for you, as I know I'm not always attending. So if you don't have any questions, that's okay. But if you do, please don't hesitate to ask. And I can't see the chat unless, oh, actually I can stop sharing and then I can.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For some reason,
Megan, I don't know, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, it's Stu Boland, I'm in Calgary.
Hi.
I went through a stem cell transplant almost 6 years ago. In fact,
Oh.
6 years tomorrow.
Wow, good for you. Congratulations.
The dietitian that I met with the way back when said that in her mind, for me to eat dark chocolate, 75% or more, dark chocolate, not candy bars, but dark chocolate was advantageous. And I loved her for that. I do my square of dark chocolate once a day, and I have for 6 years now.
Excellent. I wouldn't tell you have to
chocolate
change that.
on the. I know you didn't have an X beside it, but are you of the same mind, or are you of a different mind?
Oh, good question. So I apologize. I should have clarified the chocolate was more pertaining to the milk chocolate and
Yes,
like chocolate bars, candy bars.
yeah,
But a little bit of dark chocolate every day. There is some antioxidant properties there. So I too wouldn't suggest you need to make that change. You can keep
oh,
enjoying that little bit of dark chocolate. Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, I'm just gonna try to unmute myself.
For some reason, I can't stop sharing at the moment. So if there
Oh,
are any questions in the chat, do one of you mind reading them out to me?
there's nothing there now. Hold on. Am I
Okay.
muted? Oh, there.
How does that, is that good now?
Yes, it's good now.
Okay.
Oh, there we
Megan,
go.
it's Rafaela. That was a wonderful presentation. I made a list of
Oh,
questions.
thank
I
you.
think you've answered almost every question on my list of
Oh,
your
I'm so
presentation
glad.
in such a clear and concise way. And I know I can go back to the presentation just to read more. There's one topic you did mention. I wrote this one down. When they speak about cancer, they talk a lot about inflammation. Is there any diet or supplement or anything I can put in my diet to help with inflammation, or what are your views on that?
Oh, good question. So yes, there are some foods that are what we might term more like anti-inflammatory.
Mhm.
And those are foods like our whole grains, our plant-based foods, foods that aren't processed. Those are going to have more health benefits to us than some of the processed foods, sweetened foods, sugary foods that maybe are more inflammatory in our bodies. But it is person dependent, and so it doesn't necessarily mean that if you have those foods, the outcome would be that there's that direct inflammation, but it's to be mindful of choosing more of those anti-inflammatory foods for overall health. Yeah. So really all the, plant-based foods, whole grains, lean proteins, those are all going to have good benefit. We do know that some foods, like turmeric and garlic, they have a little bit of those anti-inflammatory properties as well. So I would just suggest you incorporate them in your diet, in your cooking, not in a supplement form.
Okay, those are my next questions.
Okay.
Going to be about turmeric.
Yeah.
So thanks for answering it.
Yeah, I would just use some in your cooking.
Yeah.
We do a lot in my household with like turmeric rice. So you just put some turmeric in your basmati rice or your whole grain rice, whatever you might be using while you're boiling that. And it's actually quite delicious. So incorporating those foods as part of your healthy diet, and limiting those processed foods as much as you can.
Okay, and you mentioned just a little bit about antioxidants. Can you talk a little bit about that? Is that common for cancer patients, or just generally for everyone you're trying to reduce or have food that's has actually to manage the free radicals? Like, I don't know much about that, but it comes up a lot when I'm reading.
Yeah, no, for sure. So fruits and vegetables are a great option for that. So they contain what we call these antioxidants, vitamin E, for example. So you would want to incorporate those foods in your diet as much as you can. So if you're eating a well-balanced diet with fruits and vegetables, you're going to, automatically have these antioxidant foods as part of your diet. And so overall, we know having those foods can help potentially with creating a healthy, well-balanced diet, can help with cancer prevention, but that doesn't mean that having them changes an outcome that may occur. Yes. It's just that we know having a healthy, balanced diet can help prevent certain types of cancers, some that have been studied, some that have not.
And during my treatment, I did have issues sleeping, and I'm usually a great sleeper, but do you have any suggestions to how to improve that during cancer treatment?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, sleep's a little bit out of my scope, but just in terms of some general things that we might consider when we're thinking about food wise would be, not having caffeine at a certain time of the day, maybe watching how much caffeine you're having. If you're waking up to go to the washroom to urinate, you might want to cut your fluid a little bit earlier on in the night and maybe just take it with if you have medication that you need to take in the evening, but staying well hydrated throughout the day. And then we talk about this like sleep hygiene. So setting yourself up for a good sleep. I know some patients might use like certain apps to help with them to sleep. So those kinds of things might be helpful.
Okay. I think I monopolized a few questions there. Is there anyone out there that has a question for Megan? No, Betty, any questions?
I don't think so.
I'd like to, I had it on mute here when I was trying to touch base.
Oh, okay.
When my husband was in treatment, there were two, and he was on rituximab when it first came out. What bothered him was that he got the constipation aspect, and the doctors were able to handle that and give him stuff. But he also got a mouthful of, I called them canker sores, but apparently they're ulcers. And when he was able, I mean, I had the food as far as I could in the sense of size. I mean, I wasn't expecting to eat a piece of steak, but it seemed to change the taste. The ulcer seemed to change the taste of the food, which then turned him right off. We went to Dairy Queen every day and got him a Dairy Queen because that he seemed to be able to eat. Is there other stuff on the market now that would relieve those mouth ulcers?
That would relieve the mouth ulcers?
Yes, or give it somehow or another, anesthetize the mouth so that he would not be turned off of the food.
Yeah. Oh, so, what I would say is, so in terms of like taking something or rinsing your mouth with something, your doctor or nurse practitioner, I'm not sure who you see in your hospital, could give you something for that. I don't know that you would need a prescription for that if you were going to the pharmacy. So I would talk to your team about what to use. If you were rinsing your mouth with, like just a general rinse, it's just to keep it clean, to get rid of any sort of like poor taste. Some of my patients use like flat club soda.
Okay.
So you could rinse with that, but that's not going to like numb the area. That's just going to get rid of any sort of like poor taste in your mouth, keep the mouth clean. Good oral hygiene is really important for any of the taste changes or the poor taste in your mouth. Or to help with those ulcers. But I would talk to your doctor or a nurse practitioner or physician assistant, whoever you might see, as to what he could take, or anyone else on the line who's experiencing that or has questions about that. I don't want to speak specifically to what our patients might use, only because it might be different for everybody. So I would just encourage you to do that. Yeah. In terms of like taste changes, that can also happen, and yes, of course, deter you from eating. So it just kind of depends what the taste changes are, and how best to choose foods to like offset that taste. So if there was anything specific, I would say there is a good resource. If you were doing some of your own lookings, the BC Cancer Agency has a really good resource on taste changes. So you might want to refer to that if there's something specific that comes up.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And Megan, there was a question.
Oh, yes, I can see it now. No,
Okay.
That's okay. Does caffeinated green tea have any special benefit? Good question. So green tea has some of those antioxidant properties. And so when undergoing treatment, though, we don't want to include an overabundance of those. I should have mentioned this earlier, an overabundance of the antioxidants in a concentrated form. And that's why you would be recommended to not take any form of like vitamin C while you're undergoing treatment, vitamin A, vitamin E, that sort of thing, because we want the antioxidants protect our cells. And so when we're trying to get rid of the bad cells, we don't want to overprotect the bad cells, sorry, want to protect the good cells. So having food with antioxidants is okay. It's in a supplement form you want to avoid. And so there is sometimes, if you're having too much of that green tea, for example, it can act in a similar way. So I would say moderate amounts, 1 cup, 2 cup maximum, and choose the decaf as well. And if there is any medication you might be taking, sometimes green tea interacts with various medications. So just double check if that's something you could have. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to send it back to you, Betty. I think that's it for questions this evening.
Okay, thank you so much, Megan. That was a very good presentation. And as I said, she was so helpful to me when I was going through treatment. I just did have one question myself. I was thinking you did spend quite a bit of time on adding calories. Some people struggle when they're on treatment that they gain calories that they don't, that they're not looking to get.
Yeah.
So do you have any specific instruction for that? I know the green tea thing. I can't take green tea on the medication I'm on. I've been advised not to do that. But I was just wondering, for people that are looking to reduce their calorie intake, do you have any quick instruction?
Yes, good question. So, during treatment isn't the time to lose weight, because we may sometimes then lose muscle mass as well. And we want to keep our lean muscle mass to keep us, fit in the sense of nourished during treatment. So what I would say to do though is, choosing foods that have good fat to them, good calories, good proteins. So if your appetite is increased from a various medication, choosing nourishing foods versus the foods that are kind of like empty calories, like chips and maybe chocolates and processed foods and that sort of thing, because long term they're not going to give you as many benefits as the healthier, more nourishing foods such as avocado, cheeses, fuller, like dairy. Those sorts of foods are going to give your body more nourishment and benefit long term. So choosing those more often, and limiting the extra snacks and kind of like junky foods that don't nourish our body as much as we can, and also contribute to weight gain. So you definitely want to still be, eating a few meals a day and snacks. We don't want to be necessarily cutting calories while on treatment, but more so distributing your your choices in a more nutritious way, so that you're helping yourself to kind of maintain your weight versus continually adding that weight on. Does that help answer your question or give you a little bit of insight?
Sure, that was good.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you
Megan.
so much for having me today. I really appreciate it. I feel honored to be part of this group tonight, and I wish you all the best of luck. And Betty, thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you.
And thank you for the kind words, of course. And let me know if there's any follow-up questions. I'm happy to address them, or if you ever need any further presentations in the future.
If anyone wanted to send you a direct question, where would they send it to?
So best if they went through you, because if they're not a patient at Princess Margaret, unfortunately, I can't necessarily do like individual counseling, but if it's a general question, I'm happy to answer that. So maybe just they can send it to you and you could send it to me.
Sure, that sounds good. Thank you again.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Enjoy
Thank
the
you.
rest of your evening.